into form, through form, back into form, through form, out and back into form immediately, through form, out and back into form immediately, through form, out and back into the next form, through form, out and back into the next form. This is the cycle of existence for us as microcosmic beings, never ending, infinitely, never dying, simply jumping from one form to the next form, infinitely and forever. The form will expire. We will immediately jump into the new form in a nanosecond, because we are eternal beings, just like Amma, never ending, infinite and unlimited power, trying to express ourselves through these human forms. So we'll go out and back into the next form, go live through this form, come to a peak at the top, and then age out. The form will age out. Our microcosmic spirit will leave that form and jump back into the next form. Live through that form, wear that form out, leave that form, and animate the next form. This is the cycle of existence for us, the microcosmic beings, the microcosmic expressions of the totality, the macrocosmic being we call Amma, endlessly and forever, jumping into form, living through these forms. The form wears out, cannot keep up with us, so we will jump from that form into the next form, endlessly and forever, living through these forms, not to be confused as being the forms. We simply jump from one form to the next form, live through that form. As the form ages out, we will simply transform into the next form, endlessly and forever. This is the cycle of our existence. How you doing, family? What I want to do with you today is talk with you. I'm going to critique or add a little, a little bit of corresponding, try to connect the dots for you. So I'm going to do a little bit of corresponding with the points that Professor Dr. Obatashaka, Brother Obatashaka is going to explain here. And this feeds into my concepts in my book, The Anatomy of Existence and the Power of Belief, where I articulate that I cover a lot of ground, okay, first and foremost. And my ultimate goal is to bring truth to fantasy and mythology, which is what America is based on. Fantasy, Christianity, America, Europe is based on mythology, fairy tales, nonsense, and lies. So my job is to enlighten people to the archaeological realities, the historical realities, and the anthropological facts and science that back up the fact what I just said about European and a particular American and European history, full of lies, myths, and the religion Christianity, as well as Islam. All of these religions, lies, myths, fairy tales, all of this is in order to maintain control over the masses of the people and keep them buying into paying homage and worshiping false ideals about whole groups of people. And my job is to shine the light so that the truth can be revealed. And I don't care what race is a lie, white supremacy is the biggest lie of them all. There's no such thing as a supreme race. How could there be a supreme race when there's only one human race? So that's a lie on the surface. If anybody who is a thinking human being will know that on the surface is a lie. Okay, unless you're just not well educated. So what I want to point out here is I want to draw some correspondences between what Baba Obatashaka is sharing with us here with his knowledge and his wisdom about the original first fully human beings. And I'm glad he made that distinction. He's going to do that in his lecture here, where he's going to articulate the difference between Lucy, who was 6 million years ago, but Lucy was not a fully human being. Lucy was human-like and had a lot of human-like features, but she was still very much on the level of a ape-like creature, human a form, or ape-like form that had human-like characteristics and behaviors. Like she may have stood up longer than most. She may have had certain other behaviors that were human, the first evidence of human-like behavior based on the anthropological evidence that they have found. And then the mitochondrial DNA sampling that they have done to confirm the age, So I wanted to make that, and I learned a lot in this. I did not know that Lucy, I knew she was ape-like, but I thought she was more human-like than what evidence is now revealing. And this goes to show how poorly and terribly educated we all are. After a certain age, you're responsible for educating yourself. And this is something Americans in particular have really dropped, especially African Americans, have dropped the ball on. You think that you got to forget this, letting anybody define anything for you. African Americans, we have got to get used to this, getting rid of this dependence on other people to educate you. Forget about that. In this world of America and this education system and white supremacy being so widespread and dominating the entire police department, dominating the entire military, dominating the entire educational system, dominating the medical system, dominating every system, the political system, white supremacy is widespread standard operating procedure in America and Europe. That is just the way it is always going to be. Now, let's work from there up. What do you do if you're an African American and you're surrounded by all of this filthy lies, mythology, fairy tales, and nonsense, and misdirection, and religious systems designed to keep you bogged down and never being able to focus on your own life and what your missions and what you need to do. And this is what these religions are designed to do: stagnate your mind and make sure you never develop any kind of independent or spiritual based knowledge that's going to allow you to take control of your life. That's what religions are designed to do: create herds of cows and followers. And if most of the people that are in it are like drug addicts, they'll fight you to stay in it. Okay, so you forget about anybody old, don't try to educate, they're hopeless. Work with the young people. That's where the work really is. And that's where all of my focus is on, young people. So in that pursuit to overcome all of this megalomaniacal insanity that is masquerading as religions and education systems, my job is to enlighten and awaken the dead, because people who are participating in those systems are walking dead people. They really don't know which way is up, and so they are lost. So in my effort, this is just a small little snippet I'm putting together and to also accomplish overcoming this task and awakening as many and enlightening as many people as possible, so that I can get you to the point where you're now practicing your law of attraction and you're in control of your life, and your joy and your happiness is guaranteed, because you are 100% in control of every aspect of your life. That's my goal. So in keeping with that mission, I want to bring this piece to your attention, because I had said in previous video lectures that there is only one human race. There is only one race. It's called humans. And the battle that we are dealing with right now, where each young person and has been born into, is still an evolutionary process of the microcosmic spiritual being that we each are, that cannot and never dies, that is as eternal as our macro self, which most people call Ama in African, AMMA, and then the Europeans later on came in and we taught them, and they developed their own name and they called it God. So the Europeans call it God. We Africans, who are the original people, we call God Ama. Okay, so when you hear me say Ama, you know I'm talking about the Europeans' version of God. Okay, and what I want to explain here is that we are so bogged down in religions and traps and mind games, and it's a matrix of mental, psycho, maniacal madness that has been created over hundreds of years. I'll give it thousands of years, but it's really been codified in the last, I would say, realistically, folks, about the last 600-700 years. So it's been hundreds of years. It's been thousands of years, and I mean low 10, low 5, 6, 3, 4,000 years in the works. Not even 3. I can't even go there, because I don't think they were that smart back then, because they were so dumb. But they were so barbaric and so brutal to all civilized Africans who were never exposed to the ice. They were very overwhelming, because they have never seen human beings that are this barbaric and horrendous, horrible people. So this is what crawled out of the caves of the Caucasus Mountains, and that's why they have dominated and polluted and contaminated the earth with their viciousness and their ugliness. But at the same time, we did get some good, because you get people like Elon Musk, you get people, scientists, and others who have moved the medical, taken the knowledge that many with the addition of the left side of the brain being more active with these Europeans, it has helped advance. You got to give them credit. They helped advance medical to a certain extent, surgical and things like that with anesthesia and things like that have been vastly improved. Mechanization and technology and the techno advancements of the human race have been big pluses in the last couple of few hundred years, with the addition of our European mutated brothers and sisters. And we have to get comfortable with as brutal and vicious and murderous and mentally ill as a very large majority of them are. You still have to, let's not lose context. They're human beings that have been mutated, mentally demented into becoming the way they are. So they have to be corralled, controlled, and put in deep, heavy law enforcement check, because and they need a lot of psychoanalysis and psychotherapy, because the ice has really twisted their brains to the point where they're vicious, and the human form in and of itself already, without any intervention of ice ages or mutating by way of albinism and crossbreeding, mal dysfunctions and whatnot, will cause a lot of problems all by himself. But then when you add in an ice age that's hundreds of thousands of years, that deforms the human form into these Europeans that are now, their pineal glands have been dried up. And it's the form that's causing the problem. It's not the spirit that is within. The spirit that is within each human being is the same spirit. Now, the question is, and my theory, this is my theory. I believe, my concept is that the microcosmic perfect spiritual being is trying to express itself through these human forms. And what you were born into, this is the best we've been able to get it to function. The microcosmic spirit, which is a micro expression of God itself, of Amma itself. So this is the best we've been able to get it to do. Okay, and I want you to stay focused on this, because the race thing will start you down the matrix. It will trip you into the matrix and down you go, because there's a whole psycho cornucopia of madness that has come from dealing with the psycho babble and nonsense of the Europeans who have been mutated, who are mutated Africans. There is only one race on the planet, and they are human, and they are African. Okay, and what this piece is going to break down for you is to further validate this essential, basic truth of our human form. The human form only. This has nothing to do with the microcosmic spiritual being that we are, which is eternal and cannot die. Okay, the human form comes and it goes, it expires and it dies. We don't die. That's basically, that's the premise that I function out of. Okay, but what I want to explain by way of this little snippet is that we have to focus on education and training the human form to comply, so that we can express our perfection that we each are at birth. We are perfect as microcosmic spiritual beings, but the form is not perfect. The form is still evolving. The form is still going through the evolutionary process of trying to learn to keep up and be able to allow us to express our perfection and our decency and our goodness and our love and our compassion through these brutal, ignorant, instinctive, intelligent forms. These physical forms that are ran by an instinctive intelligence that is dumb, brutal, and is in the process of being trained. Okay, and that's the truth. And that's why you have to know yourself. You have to know your physical self, and you have to understand your spiritual self. And these are the two dualities that exist that we are functioning out of as microcosmic beings having a human experience in human forms. Okay, so I'm going to move away from the more spiritual, cosmological breakdown of this of my book, and focus more on now the forms, and this is just to give you the historical anthropological truth of what race exists, if any, and that is the human race, if you need to talk like that. But we do need the vocabulary for culture. We do need the vocabulary for geographic location, that most people connect their physical forms to, whether they be Europeans, Africans. But the point I'm trying to make here is everybody is an African. They have just migrated to Europe, got caught into the ice up there in Europe, and got caught in the 100,000, 300-year ice age. And those Africans mutated and came out, and now they're Europeans. Okay, and they have spread all over the world, and once they became mutated Africans and called themselves Europeans, and they became what they call, quote unquote, fairer skin, blue-eyed, straight hair. These are cave dwellers, basically. That's why we call them that, only in the sense that, and mutate in the sense that their hair is different, their nose structure is different, their physical form is totally different, and it comes with a whole cornucopia and matrix of lies and vulgarity, and because people of the ice are brutal, vulgar, filthy animals, and that's the way they were, and they're still, their human form is that way. So they're still trying to grow out of that, and they've only been doing it for the last, maybe they crawled out of the caves maybe 5,000-6,000 years ago. They got these folks got a long way to go. They got a long, big time, long way to go, folks. So I just wanted to give you that by way of background on what we're going to be covering here. But I want to just give you this and let Dr. Obadeshaka, or Baba Obadeshaka, explain this to you. Here we go.
That the Kun people of Northwest Kalahari Desert, which is in South Africa, people that I study carefully in the Mother Principle and also in the Integration Trap. The Kun people of the Kalahari Desert in South Africa and the Biaka, B-I-A-K-A, TWA of Central Africa, which is the Congo. They are the root people, the mothers and fathers of humanity. Now, this finding based on mitochondrial DNA lineage coming from the mother is based on the L mitochondria lineage. L is the parental lineage for Africans, and from this parental lineage comes the lineage of Asians and Europeans. So, and theirs is of a different mitochondrial DNA. So all human beings on the planet are descended, as we already know, from a common African ancestor. And the TWA are African, and they're Black. They're Black. And another thing that some anthropologists have tried to do is separate them from other Africans. The only difference between them and other Africans is size. They're small, usually under 5 feet. They're fully formed, human beings. They're just small. And small is like the beginning of everything. You could say God is no thing and everything. You know what I mean? And all things begin small. So the TWA are Black people, an African people. Mitochondrial DNA dates them back to 144,000 years, give or take 10,000 years. The error in mitochondrial DNA is 10,000 years. So it could be 10,000 years more, 154,000, or less, 134,000. But that's the realm of time for the beginning of what's called Homo sapiens sapiens, that is human beings. We're not talking Lucy. Lucy was a primate that had human characteristics, but was not human.
I want to add here in at this particular point in Dr. Baba's Obadeshaka's statement here. And this is what I was leading to, and I'm going to repeat again later on in my statement. Context, time. Listen to the time he's talking about. This is where we're going to connect some dots here. If you know that the first human beings were African, the TWA, the Mbuti people, they can trace back there through DNA. This is scientific, archaeological facts that they are the original people. They are the oldest people. And then the date that they give, 144,000 years. That's how old, give or take 10,000 years. So I'm going to go and again, when America is only 200 years old, the variance in the likely true beginnings of the first African humans on the planet, the variance is 10,000 years, not 1,000 years. The variance, it could be more or less, 10,000 years. America's only been in existence for 200 years, folks. The Europeans, the Africans were mutated and crawled out of the caves only 7,000 to 10,000 years ago. 10,000, that's the variance between how old the first human on the planet, the variance, his actual age and her actual age is 144,000 years. That's the best they can do. Okay, but just look at those numbers. They're devastating numbers. So Europeans, 7,000 years, 200 years with America, you ain't did nothing. They haven't done nothing. And my point is, you got to keep that in context. What are they going to brag about how many people they slaughtered in the 7,000 years that they crawled out of the caves? I wouldn't be bragging about that. And this is part of the critical race theory that they don't want taught in schools, because they don't want their children to know how barbaric their ancestry is, because then they're afraid they're going to actually do something to correct it. So they don't want them to correct it. They want them to stay barbarians. They want them to keep whatever they stole and killed and slaughtered to get. They don't want their kids to have a conscience. They don't want their kids to have moral guilt for what their ancestors have done and try to right the wrong. They don't want them to do that. The Confederate GOP party of murderers and killers, gangsters and corrupt people in cahoots with the Russians will do anything to maintain their preferential treatment as these quote unquote white people, which doesn't exist. It's a myth. And they're afraid that education, the critical race theory, is going to expose and educate people to how phony and fake this whole matrix of lies is. And they're afraid it's going to go back to the Bible. And they're afraid it's going to go back to the Quran and all these other religions that are nothing but stuff that people made up at the time to keep people from eating each other and just outright killing each other willy-nilly, which they were doing anyway. You know, but it was just, you got to understand, this human form is barbaric, you know, and the history of it is just beginning, at least the mutated ones. They are the ones that brought the death and the destruction and the evil and the hatred and the contempt and the lies and all of these immoral things that didn't exist in the world before they came. Then people might have been naughty, but if somebody lied, it was just such an offense that it was just not thought of. It's like committing murder. A lie was like murder in today's times. Back then, there wasn't no TV, there was no internet, there wasn't none of this radio, wasn't none of that stuff, didn't exist. So people had a lot of time on their hands, let me tell you. So when you hear these timetables, you gotta be devastated to see, wow, 10,000 years, just variance alone? So if you figure the TWA people have been on the planet for 144,000 years. You know that some segment or sect of them were the people that got caught in the ice and went underground for 100,300 years. So the TWA people that stayed out in the sun and, you know, had plenty of food to eat, animals to hunt and live off of and fish and thrive and grow crops and be happy. And they didn't know nothing about scrounging for survival. Like those other people, the other Africans who were caught in the Ice Age had to go deep down in the caves, and they became these mutated things called Europeans, Russians, and all these other people that are calling themselves white. And they're lying and breaking off the noses of all their ancestors who had done in the 100,000 years that they sat under the ice. These people evolved and they came out. So when they crawled out of the caves and saw how far people had evolved past them, the jealousy, the hatred of God for making it happen, the hatred of nature for making it happen to them, and then the jealousy that they have for the people who did not get caught in the Ice Age. And that's what you're seeing. That's where white supremacy comes from. That's where the Bible comes from. That's where the Quran comes from. That's where all these lies and mythological stories and crap came from. It's the hatred of nature, God, and jealousy of the people who never went in the ice. And that is the motivation for all of the corruption, evil, lying, hatred, contempt, cannibalism, eating other people, murdering, slaughtering, genocide, germs, you name it. It's coming out of that. So that's the context. Now, people, you can argue with minutia, or it wasn't quite like, I ain't talking about quite. I'm talking about the core of emotions that the human form reacts as when it feels like it's being treated unequal. This is what it does. It's a dumb brute, and this is the way it will react. And the microcosmic beings that are trapped in these vehicles that were mutated like this, they're trapped. So without a good education system, without a good, a true education system, and a political system that will allow the African people who were not trapped in the ice, who are more civil and more decent and moral and develop principles and math and all the sciences, they brought all of this while the others were trapped in the ice trying to survive. And all they know is brute survival. That's why once they get accomplish something, they don't know how to behave because they just can't, it's not good enough. They're used to killing. They need something to kill. It's just in their DNA. It's just the way they evolved. So that has to be cleared out of them through some kind of therapy, psychotherapy. But the primary way to do it is education. That's the way to do it. But I wanted to give you that so you have the time context. Listen to the numbers. 144,000 years that the Africans have been in existence and have evolved to be the best that human beings can be on this planet as of today, morally, spiritually, principally, living in harmony with nature, not destroying the planet. That's why the Europeans are going through all of this discovery process, and these Russians and these people who are mutated Africans, and their brains have been warped and twisted. So it's very difficult for the microcosmic spirit to express itself through these human forms with all this demented instinctive intelligence dominating the intuitive intelligence, which should be dominating. Okay, so I wanted to add that in. Time. Look at compare the time, do comparative analysis of the times. As long as that Baba Obachaka is breaking down here, explaining to you the context. When you look and you do the comparative analysis and you compare the time that the mutated Africans were in the caves and then came out 6,000-7,000 years ago, 7,000 years, that ain't nothing. That's nothing in the time. Look at the destruction that they brought, that you can look at. But when you look at 144,000 years, so that means they were out for 44,000 years and then they got caught in the ice after 44,000 years of being a human, a normal human out in the sun. So after 44,000 years, just a mere 44,000 years, they were barely able to write stuff on walls. So the people in the caves, the cave dwellers, the mutates, the Europeans and the Russians and all these people, they missed all of that human development, all of that human evolution. They missed all of that. So by the time they came back out, people were carving pyramids. They had, the Stone Age was mastered. Metal was beginning to be mastered at that point, but they never thought of making weapons to the point where there would be this mass killing and murdering going on. That wasn't in the Africans' DNA. That came from the caves, the cave dwelling mutated Africans. All right, so I wanted to give you that context. Let's keep it moving.
Had human qualities, but not human. We're talking about fully formed human beings. So the fact that humanity has a common origin, it means, first of all, you can't talk about superior, inferior people. In fact, this notion of race is a European invention. We've had to deal with it, so we have race consciousness without being racist. So what we have to understand then is that human beings have a common source. And if there's anything special we can say about African humanity is we are the source. That's kind of special. And I think that affects the mentality of African people. There's a mothering and fathering instinct that comes from that. There's a humane instinct that comes from that. So this is a key quality in terms of understanding the TWA and their role in being the first human.
Okay, so one of the key things I want to talk about here and point out is everything, you have to always try to keep things in context. Time context for us as living through these physical forms, time matters here. So when you're talking about history, I want to give you, to show you how to value current structures politically and whatnot in terms of countries and how long they've been around and their strength based on their lineage and how long they've existed. America is so infantile. Just because you're a big, ugly brute and you know how to kill a whole bunch of folks and you can annihilate entire nations, that's good, vulgar characteristics as a brute. That gives you some kudos as a brute, and nobody want to mess with you because you're big. But the problem is when you look at the scheme of time, we just celebrated in 1976, America celebrated 200 years. A lousy 200 years. That is so pathetic in the scheme of time, relative to the past. It is pathetic. America is a baby. We are just getting started. And as far as microcosmic beings expressing ourselves through these human forms, we are less than babies. Because you're dealing with an infinite being. We are infinite beings expressing ourselves through finite human forms. So we're just getting started as infinite relative to us being an infinite being. 200 years here in America, folks, that doesn't even garner acknowledgement on the stage of human existence. We haven't done anything. We are just a nanite on a timeline. So we need to humble down, put your chest away, get you cool out, because we're lucky that we haven't killed each other yet. That's how dumb and brutal the human form is and out of control. And if you don't institute, what's going to save us is the internet and my videos, things like this. This is what's going to save the world, because we're going to do what human beings have been able to do over and above all other animated creatures, or animals as they call them. We write things down. We can educate each other. We can pass along data. Now with the internet, it cannot even be stopped. So communication is the key. Education is the key. And now education has been moved out of the hands of the oppressors, which is the education system and the economic system and the political systems. There is an alternative world out here where we have the internet, we have cryptocurrency. We're ready to take this thing to a new level that's going to be non-racial. There'll be no no supremacy rules and none of that. You know, all of that's getting ready to get wiped out. Or it's going to go to the next level. It's going to be bumped down a level in this next evolution. But see, when you're an eternal being, see, all of these little steps and all this stuff that's going on, if you focus from the perspective of an infinite microcosmic being that you are, and this is proved to you every night because your body has to sleep and you're still dreaming. So that means your energy is keep going on. Your focus, your ability as being the watcher continues, because you can't die, you can't sleep, we don't do none of that. We are microcosmic spiritual beings. We do not sleep. We do not die. We never end. We are forever watching. That's what we do. That's what we are. And see, once you focus, when you first start to function out of that perspective that I have been functioning out of for the last 45 years, you begin to, it frees you up. And you can step out of things and you cannot worry and you don't really have to care. You know, these things are going to go on. This is physical form, and physical form is temporary. It's here today, gone tomorrow. That's just the nature of physical form. Once you accept that, then things get a whole lot simpler. Okay? And the point I wanted to bring out here in this snippet is there is only one race, folks, and it's humans. And we, as microcosmic spiritual beings, which is perfection itself, we are still working to express ourselves through these physical forms. And these physical forms on this particular planet has gone through certain changes and certain challenges and certain situations that are weather related and physical, but it's all physical stuff. This is all temporary stuff. We have to respect it. We have to work within it. And this is part of the adventure of being alive, is functioning through this human form and overcoming all the challenges that come with the evolutionary process of evolving into better people, better humans. That's what the ultimate goal of evolution is all about. And improving the quality of our life. That's what the goal of my videos is about, is giving you the tools you need in order to take charge of your life and free your mind of all of this paranoid mythology and madness of the religions and all of this nonsense that is not real. It's all a mythological story that they made up. Okay? And once you understand that, you'll stop listening to the madness, cut TV off, throw the Bible in the garbage, throw the Quran in the garbage next to the Bible, and get out here and learn some spirituality and get into some law of attraction, and auto-suggestion, and take charge and take control of your life and forget about all that stuff, because it's all nonsense and it ain't real. Okay, what's real is that you have the power within your mind to repeat Whatever thoughts and visions you want for yourself, repeat it every day, 2-3 times a day. You keep repeating it, and the subconscious machine gonna bring it to you. That's all you need to know. Forget about all that Jesus Christ and striking down and all this nonsense and foolishness and crap and God watching and stupid nonsense like that, which is not real. You know, you just have to get away from that matrix of lies and nonsense and come out of the matrix and see the real world. And once you do that, and you know you can't die, you're going to experience the internal peace, joy, and happiness that I am experiencing and that I want for you. Hotep family, and I'll see you in the next movie.